476 here, bringing you my first ever Kerbal Space Program video. Now this video is just basically a tutorial for new players on how to build a basic rocket and how to get it into orbit. Now I'm making this video now because recently I've seen that Kerbal Space Program has come on Steam sale. I think it's finished now, but I reckon that a lot of people probably will have bought it in that time. And I've been playing this now. I think I've logged over about 130 hours now on this game, so I kind of know what I'm talking about now, and I thought I'd like to pass on my knowledge to you guys. So basically, we'll tell you what, I'll start. I'll go into, I'll go on my my save. So yes, we're here at the Kerbal Space Center. Now we're going to go into the vehicle assembly bit. The vehicle assembly building. Okay, so the first major component to any rocket is the command pod Mark 1. Now obviously for larger and bigger rockets you can start going to the Mark 1-2 command pod, you can get the Mark 1 cockpit, lander can, whatever you want, but for this simple rocket design we're going to use the Mark 1 command pod. And to be honest, you use this for a lot of stuff, including landers as well as rockets themselves. So on this we're going to want to do a few things first. So basically this is what we're going to return back to Kerbal in, so we're going to need to make this safe. The first thing we're going to do is go into the Utilities tab and pop on a Mark 16 parachute. Now this will basically does what it says on the tin and allows us to get this back to Kerbal in one piece, which is, you know, a pretty big deal because we don't want Jeb Kerman, which is probably the main astronaut in this, being destroyed. So next, in order to make this separable from the main rocket, we're going to add one of these, a TR-18A stack decoupler. Now these basically, what these do is, if I sort of have an example, say if I added this fuel tank, this stack decoupler will separate when I add it to the staging. Well, when I move it around on the staging selection here, when I press the spacebar, this stack decoupler will separate this fuel tank from this command module, and then you will basically end up controlling what you're in. So, for example, for this, the Kerbal is in the command pod, so you will carry on controlling the command module. So that's because that's all that you need basically to return back to Kerbal, because we're not carrying any scientific data or anything. So all you basically need is this little command module that the Kerbal is going to sit in. So we're not going to use this fuel tank actually because it's too small for what we want. Now, of course, to any rocket, we obviously need fuel, because we're going to use a liquid fuel engine because we want to be able to control thrust and gimbaling. So we're going to use the largest of the medium fuel tanks, if that makes sense. So this is, I'll do an example. This is one of these small fuel tanks. I think that's the, what size is that in relative? I think that's just the smallest you can have. Yes, that's the smallest fuel tank you can have. That's the small fuel tank, and then we have these medium fuel tanks. We have the small medium, the medium, and the largest of the medium, which is the ones we're going to be using. So we have this, this, and this. And then we have, if we get rid of them, then we have the small large, medium large, and then ridiculously huge large. But those are for really big rockets and sending stuff into, you know, to other planets. So we don't need that for the time being. For some reason it's gone really laggy. Anyway, so yeah, so for now we're going to just be using the largest of the medium fuel tanks, which is the FLT 800 fuel tank. So once we have we're going to have a couple of these because we do need a bit of fuel to get up there. And then from this we now have a selection of 3 main rocket types to put on the bottom. We have the LVT-30, which has 215 max engine power. The only problem with this one though, even though it does have max engine power, it doesn't actually have any gimbaling. Now gimbaling is when this nozzle will rotate left and right to aid with the steering of the rocket. But you know, for a rocket of this size we don't need that much thrust, so we can get rid of that. Then the next one is actually the one we're going to use, which is the LVT-45. It looks very similar to the T-30, but the problem with it, as you can see, this one actually is marginally smaller than the T-30. And that's because it has slightly less power, but in response to that, it has gimbaling, which allows us to steer it more easily. So we're going to use this rocket, and then we do have another choice of the LV-909 rocket, but that's too small for what we want really. This is used for landers and such. So we have a liquid engine, we have the fuel, we're good to go. Wrong. No, we're not good to go yet. We're still, this on its own, yes, it'll probably make it to about maybe 20 kilometers, but past then, it'll run out of fuel and fall back down. That's not what we want. We want to get into orbit, so we're going to need some help. We don't want to add any more fuel onto this rocket, because otherwise then it's going to be too much fuel for the power of this rocket, so it's not going to be effective, and it's just going to end up being inefficient, and that's not what we want. So then we're going to have the aid of what we like to call solid fuel boosters. Now, as you can see, this one's pretty much the size of my main rocket. Solid fuel boosters are different to liquid fuel boosters in the fact that a solid fuel booster, there's only on or off. That's it. No difference. Whereas a liquid fuel engine, you can control the throttle and you can also turn it off. Whereas as soon as you set a solid fuel booster going, that's it. It'll run out. It'll full 100% full blast until it runs out of fuel. So these aren't very practical to use when you're up in space, because you want to be able to control your burning. So we're going to use these to help with the launch of the rocket. So we're not going to use this big thing because this is too big for what we need. We only need to use these smaller RT10 solid fuel boosters. So we're going to just going to move that off to one side for a minute, because we're going to need to have something to attach these onto the main rocket. Because also we don't want to just attach it onto the side like so, because yes, although this would work very well and it would be quite a stable, let's just get two of them. It'll be quite a stable rocket. When these run out of fuel, which they will do relatively quickly, we're just going to be carrying dead weight then, which we don't want. We want to be as efficient as possible when building our rockets. So in that fact, we're going to grab the aid from these TT70 radial decouplers. Now these things are amazing. I use these for everything. I very rarely actually use the other decouplers. I always tend to use this one. So we're gonna have 3 of these, just because three is always a good number. It's nice even. You always want to try and do things evenly on a rocket. So things in 3s and 4s are usually the best. 2s are okay, but only in smaller designs. When you start getting bigger, if you have stuff in 2s, it starts to get a bit awkward. So we're going to plant these 3 radial decouplers on the bottom of this rocket. Now we're also going to add, making sure that it's on angle snap, just then we can easily make it symmetrical, because when you have it on, when it's circularized, it can go anywhere, so therefore you could have it a bit lopsided, and that would make the rocket unbalanced, which we don't want. So we're going to have an angle snaps, and it can only go in certain positions. So I'm going to have it there, and as you can see, it's perfectly in between. It's perfectly symmetrical on either side. So once we've done that, we're now going to have these RT10 rocket fuel boosters, making sure we're on 3, and then line them up as best we can, making sure that they're definitely on. All of it's on. So yeah, that's very good. So there we are. We have the 3 solid fuel boosters. Now, this on its own would work very well, but we also need a bit more extra help than that. So in order to make the rocket design more stable, we probably don't need these, but I'm just going to show you these anyway, because you need these virtually for any other rocket design that you decide to build. These are strut connectors, and struts basically allow any design of rocket to work, regardless of how ridiculous it looks, because they basically make it stable. So we're just going to add these to here, just to make it a bit stronger. It's just add these metal pylons which allow sort of further stability, and so therefore then we can be sure that when these start burning, that these radial decouplers aren't going to snap or bend or twist or make it so then we have an uneven flight. So there we are. So our solid fuel boosters are secure. So now what we need to do is, because this is going to be in the low atmosphere for a while, we're going to want to make it a bit more stable than it is already. So we're going to add some flaps, and these are you can't go far wrong with these AV R8 winglets, and these turn on their own. So they don't have like little ailerons that normal rudders would have. The whole wing moves left to right. So we're gonna have 3 of these like we did with the solid fuel boosters, and we're just gonna put them in between each radial decoupler, and then that's going to making sure that obviously we're on snap point and 3 symmetry, therefore it's all nice and symmetrical. And then finally, in order for us to be able to sort of position this on the launch pad without having to balance it all on this rocket, because that could damage this rocket, we're going to go on structural, and we're going to choose these TT18A launch stability enhancers. Make sure we're on 3. We're going to put one on each of these solid fuel boosters. Ideally you want to have them on the main rocket, but because we don't really have enough space, we're okay to put them on here because they're well attached to the central rocket. I'm just going to pull this down a little bit. Okay, and then we're pretty much good to go. We only need to do a few things now. We need to check that our staging is correct. So this little menu this is basically telling you what's going to happen every single time you press the spacebar, because the spacebar launches your next set of staging. So this basically tells us that the first time we press the spacebar, these 3 engines are going to ignite, which is shown by this 3 little solid fuel boost icon here, and then these 3 launch stability enhancers are going to decouple as well, which is perfect. That's what we wanted to do. So that stage is fine. We don't need to muck about with that. The next thing we want to do now, because these are going to run out of fuel very quickly, and we're going to want to get rid of these as soon as they run out of fuel. So that's going to be the next stage, is that these 3 are going to decouple, which is there. But we also want, in that stage as well, for this engine to ignite as soon as those decouple. So we're going to move across the engine icon from the second launch stage to the from the third launch stage to the second. So now, when we press the spacebar for the second time, these 3 we're going to lose these 3 solid fuel boosters, and the liquid fuel engine is going to ignite. And then after that, the only thing we need to do after that is going to be quite much more into the future, because this is going to be burning for a while, and that is to decouple the command module, which we can then use to return safely back to Kerbal. So I think we're ready for that, guys. Let's just save this craft. I always like to save all my designs so I can come back to them. It's always nice to see what I've made in the past. We're going to call this basic tutorial rocket. Save. And then, well, actually, one thing we can do, actually, look on crew and see who's going to be flying with us today. We're going to have Munson Kerman, sorry. You'd normally have Bill, Bob and Jeb doing it instead, but they are, I think they're on the moon on my save at the minute. So yes, anyway, now we're at the stage. Now we're on the launch pad. There's a couple of things we need to do first. First of all, on any launch you're going to do, you're going to press the T key straight away. And this, as you'll see, this little blue button lights up. It says SAS on it. Now, SAS is stability assistance something. It's basically autopilot. It basically allows you to stay in one. It'll try its best to stay on the course that you're on. Obviously, so long as your aircraft is, your rocket is symmetrical, you're not going to have any problems with this. And I'm sorry about that. Mum just came in. Basically, yes, the autopilot means that when you press T, then it'll keep on the same heading, and you always get sort of a basic version come standard with most command pods. You can get advanced SAS, and you can put that on there. It looks a bit like a radial decoupler, but for a small rocket design like this, we don't really need it. So what we're going to do first is we are going to throttle up using the left shift key. As you'll see, this rising to the top, and then once everything's all in order, we've got SAS on, we're throttled up. We can just press the spacebar to launch the rocket. So as you can see, we're accelerating pretty quickly. You wouldn't normally accelerate this fast in a large rocket because it's got a lot of mass, but as this small little rocket, it does the trick just fine. Now, these are going to run out of fuel pretty quickly, as you can see, so we need to be ready to press spacebar as soon as those run out of fuel. Press spacebar, we've got rid of these, and the liquid fuel engine is ignited. Now what we need to do is we need to watch this altitude indicator here. This is your height above sea level, and basically when this hits 10,000 meters, you want to then turn on a 90-degree angle, which I'm going to do, and now there we are. So it doesn't matter if you get it, if you don't get it exact. It's just a rough, it's a guideline, because when we're trying to get into orbit, we're not just, you want to get sort of through the 10,000 meters is the first sort of thickest part of the atmosphere. You want to get straight up and get out of that as soon as you can, because your rocket's going very slowly and it's a real pain in the ass. So there's the moon as well. I might take a picture of that actually, just as my hang on, thumbnail. Oh yeah, very nice. Yeah, so you basically want to get into, when you get into orbit, you don't just have your height to consider, you also have your speed. Because in order to get into orbit, you need to be travelling at around about 2,200 meters per second. So in this case, we're doing roughly 700 meters per second now. So we're increasing very rapidly. And then when we press the M key, we're going to want to look onto the map and see actually where our apoapsis is. Now apoapsis is the highest point in the orbit, and we want to make sure this gets over 70,000. So when it does, we're going to press the X key, but I'm going to get to 75 just for a bit of breathing space. As long as we maintain this heading, this should happen quite quickly. X, there we go. Right, so it will decrease slightly because we're still in the atmosphere, so we're still going to slow down a little bit. But this is basically your flight plan. This is where you're going to end up. This is, if you didn't do anything now, this is where you'd end up. At the minute, it'll be in the middle of the ocean. So basically, what we want to do is, now that we've got enough momentum now and the right heading to end up 75 kilometers above Kerbal. Now you want to get to 75 kilometers above Kerbal because at 70 kilometers, that's where the atmosphere ends, and you want to get above the atmosphere to get into an orbit. You have to, otherwise it won't work. So, well, it will work, but you won't be able to stay in the orbit for very long. You'd end up just returning back to Kerbal. So make sure you're over 70 kilometers, and then you want to make sure you speed up time, just to get close to the apoapsis. So once we're at the apoapsis, we're going to want to look at our nav ball here on the map. Now you can see this little yellow indicator with 3 arrows pointing away, and it has got a clear center. This is your prograde marker. Now prograde basically is the direction of which your velocity is heading. So basically in the fact that the way that we're pointing. So if you look here, if I point at the prograde marker, we're pointing this way, and that's because that's the way that we're going. So if I burn this way, I'd speed up as fast as possible. So now that's what we need. So I'm going to start burning prograde now when I've got close to the apoapsis marker. Now I want to keep the apoapsis marker as close to us as possible. And we can do this by burning on either sides of the retrograde marker. See, if I burn closer to on the blue side, the apoapsis marker starts going away from me. If I go on the brown, it comes towards me. So we're going to want to try and find an even sort of indicator of both, because the closer we are to it, the more even orbit we get, and that's sort of, we want the most symmetrical orbit possible. So now we've burned fully, we should see, as soon as these switch places, they'll be at the same time. There we are. So now, just burn a bit more. There we are. So 95,073. Perfect. So make sure that your periapsis, which is the lowest point in your orbit, is above 70 kilometers. Once it's 70,000 meters. When it's above 70,000 meters, you're safe. You're in an orbit, and it's done. Yay! There we go. We're in an orbit, and we've actually got a truckload of fuel left. Loads of fuel, which is brilliant. So this little basic design has allowed us to get in space. So it's like really not that difficult. As long as you got some few basic pointers, it's really not that difficult. You don't need a huge rocket to get into space. As long as got the right know-how, you can get in there easily. So now if we were to speed up time, we could just go round and round and round Kerbal until, the cows come home, which normally takes a while. So yes, we want to, when you're in an orbit, you basically in a stable orbit. Now this is sort of the start platform for any major journey into the Kerbal solar system, whether that be to the moon, to Kerbal's other moon called Minimus, which is there, and then to another planet, say Duna, which is one of the main ones, or there's Eve, Moho, where are the other planets? We've got Dres, Joule, and the Elu should be around here somewhere. There you go, Elu, which is sort of the Kerbal Space Program equivalent of Pluto. So yes, basically we're now in a very stable orbit. So you need to make sure you can master this, because you're going to be doing this a hell of a lot. Every single journey that you have, you're going to want to get into an orbit first, just because it provides a nice stable point where you can think, you can plan, and that sort of stuff. So now basically this tutorial was all about getting back as well. So what we're going to want to do is we want to make sure, just so we can see what we're doing, I'm going to burn a little bit. So now when I burn retrograde, which is the opposite direction, which is actually, if you look on the nav ball here, this is the retrograde marker. It's got, instead of having it left, right, and up, we've now got sort of diagonally left and right and up, and a cross in the center. That's the retrograde marker. Now that's the point at which your velocity is going against, because you can see we're pointing in the opposite direction of which we're going. So if I burn here, this is going to slow us down as quickly as possible, and that's all you need to do really, is to fall out of an orbit. You need to slow yourself down. So what we're going to do is we are going to just going to warp a bit further so then I don't land in the ocean, because because we're going to come down pretty steeply as soon as we slow ourselves down, because you don't have to slow yourself down enough, that much to fall out of orbit. So we're going to end up to about here, because we're looking to land on this landmass here. And okay, we're going to point retrograde, and by holding the shift key we're going to throttle up. As you can see, immediately, that's all the burning it took. And as you can see, we're heading in a crash course into Kerbin, which is what we want. Now, even though it's pointing here, we're not going to end up here, because the atmosphere is going to, as soon as we hit about here, we're going to enter the atmosphere, and it's going to slow us down dramatically. So this would be if we were still traveling at 2,000 meters per second, which when we hit about here, we're only going to be traveling about 500 meters per second. So we're actually going to end up around about here, which isn't actually a good thing considering it looks like mountains. So we might have fun with this, but you know, we'll give it a go. So now that we're definitely heading back to Kerbin, we don't need this rocket stage anymore. So we're just going to press the spacebar, and using that stack decoupler, we have now detached ourselves from the main rocket. Bye bye rocket. Ah, so normally quite sad seeing bits of your rocket go, but that'll as well fall back into Kerbin and explode. So we don't need to worry about that debris anymore. So yes, now we're in a collision course with Kerbin. You can now turn off SAS by pressing T, and basically just let yourself fall back down to Earth. And you can speed up time using the directional arrows next to the right shift key. Actually, I'm just going to move my parachute so it's the next thing to press space to. Or is my next staging. So as you can see, we're about 50,000 meters. We're 20,000 meters below the atmosphere now. So we should start to see some re-entry effects happening pretty soon as we enter the lower parts of the atmosphere, and we're going to start slowing down really quickly soon. There we are. What's that? Oh, I think that was from a previous video I did. Yeah, Milan Kerbin, yeah. I filmed this video before, but it didn't work as well, so that's the other one. What are the odds of that? Anyway, so yes, as we're falling down now, you see we've slowed down massively to now nearly around 600 meters per second. As you can see, oh no, yeah, we're actually just before this landmass here, which is good. So when we hit to about 10,000 meters, which is going to happen soon, you want to press the space bar to open up. Oh, sugar. I should have left it in the other launch stage, but basically, yeah, you want to leave it in the other launch stage, press space bar, and then it'll open up. And now it'll open in this sort of semi-deployed stage until we reach 500 meters above the ground that we're on. Now this meter is actually above sea level, which, as you can see, we're not above the sea, we're above land. So this isn't an accurate representation of how high we are. If you press the C key, you can actually look inside the cockpit as to where our Kerbal is. And if you look at here, this is actually our radar altitude. This is our altimeter for inside the cockpit, and this gives us an accurate reading above the ground how high we are above the ground that we're currently heading towards. So as we can see, we're actually we're now at 2,000 meters, and here it says 2,700. So if you're landing on the moon and whatnot and it's dark and you can't see what you're doing, this is your best friend, because this can actually tell you how far away you are, and you can sort of judge your speed in terms of that. So when we hit 500 meters, which is now, there we are, the parachute will open, and we will fall very slowly back down to Kerbin. I'm just going to speed this up, otherwise we're going to be here forever. I'll slow it down. Bang! And we have landed. Yeah, so for now we can get Munson Kerman out the little spacecraft. Well, the command pod. And have a good walk around with him. No, we could even plant... Oh no, we can't for some reason. Hang on. Get him on top of the ground for some reason. There we are, plant flag. It's not much of an achievement planting a flag on Kerman, but you know, we managed to successfully build a rocket and then I'm able to re-enter back onto Kerbin safely. So we're just going to put first. We're alive. We're alive. that's what we like. We like the curvings. For some reason, he keeps sinking into the floor. Awkward quicksand. Flipping out. So yes, we managed to land safely. So that is the tutorial concluded, guys. So in this tutorial, we built a basic design for a rocket. We got it into orbit, and then we were able to return safely back to Kerbal. Yay! Thanks guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment and subscribe for more Kerbal Space Program videos. In my next video, I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to launch a space probe into, obviously, orbit around Kerbal. Thanks for watching guys, cheers.